Welcome again. This is Minister G coming to you again with a Set the Record Straight video. And I want to respond to the spirit of enmity against those who are thirsty to live right in an overly ungodly age. We're gonna have Paul mentioned this, and I'm going back to the Old Testament, and I'm gonna show in the New Testament. Say they really saying the same thing, and they are just rightly dividing the word, meaning knowing how to use it and when to use it and how it benefit them. Like here with Isaiah the prophet. And this video is, I could call it a third installment in the mystery of godliness, which is no mystery. It's just ungodly men snuck into the church through philosophy, wrestling with the scriptures and just turning everything upside and down. And I'm sad to say it, but these ungodly men are men that with great influence, and we look up to them because they are eloquent in speech. They learn Greek, they learn Latin, they learn all different type of language. But the truth of it, they are devoid of the truth, or they are devoid of the complete truth of God. And so those people who are living in this time, who are thirsty to live right, they want to live right, they yearn to live right, we're gonna have a hard time. And so as the Spirit says that we are really pilgrims in the earth, and in the sense that pilgrims, you kind of wandering like Abram all over the place at times. Not that you're a vagabond like those Jews no, that's not what it means. It means just that you're trying to find a place where God is the builder of that city. And so search for that place. And so I want to come against those demonic spirit, those spirit of enmity against the truth, that they're going to just come up against us and be very contradictory. So when we look at Isaiah here, the prophet, look, this is what he says. When he saw the Spirit of the living God in spirit, and you have to personify what he saw. And let me give you a revelation. The way he personified what he saw was through the building, what they used to build the temple, which is spiritual. So he saw God in the spirit through the personification and the what's the word? The figurative language of what they made in the temple, and he saw God through those things. But look is what his testimony is. When he saw the posts of the door were shaken by the voice of him who cried out, and the house was filled with smoke. So Isaiah the prophet said, "Woe is me, for I am undone, because I'm a man of unclean lips." And look what is very important now, what he says. "And I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips." Those who are righteous in any given time, in any given generation, this will be their testimony. They dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. And he says, "For I have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." And if you look, it says, "Behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin purged." And also the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I sell, and who will go for us?" So this is the prophet seeing the Spirit of the Lord, seeing the Lord in spirit. And as I said before, the revelation is If you go before this and you see where the King Solomon created the temple and he used all the seraphim and all those are images of spirits. The prophets see the King of glory through what was manifested physically. He saw them in spirit, not necessarily these are in heaven. He saw them because some things we can't even describe in the spirit. We have to wait until it manifests to a certain degree so that we can, as a human context, relate them to each other. But what Isaiah saw, I didn't saw these things. I see things differently. So this is his testimony. I don't see it like, I never see the King God like this because I never see the temple. And these are all revelation. But this is what he saw through the manifestation of the temple that Solomon built. He saw the King through that revelation. That's how it works. And so when Isaiah realized that he saw the Spirit of the living God through what was manifested through the king, he realized that he was undone. And many are people who want to live righteous will see this. And so when we talk about 1 Timothy and we talk about the spirit of godliness and God manifest in the flesh, and philosophers have just do a horrendous job understanding the spirit of the living God, we who are here are just messed up because they just tell us all kind of wranglings. And if we look at Corinthians here, and you look at the conduct of the Lord's Supper, that's the title, which is a good title, the conduct of the Lord's Supper. This is pretty much the same thing as what Paul says to Timothy in 1 Timothy 3. Godliness is not just talking about Jesus who taught, who was a chief cornerstone in the sense that he came with a clear revelation, and now even me coming with a much clearer revelation. And Paul and Timothy at their time came with a better revelation, which is much clearer, and which is the spring of water, which is the Spirit of the living God. And I'm coming much, much more clearer over time because the same Spirit that was in them is in me. And so I'm using the same reference that they do, and I'm just coming clearer and clearer. So when we look at 1 Timothy and you're talking about godliness and you're talking about God, it's here when Paul said, now in giving these instructions, do not praise you, since you have come together not for the better, but for the worse. And see, and the verse 19, for there must also be faction among you, that those who are approved may be recognized among you. Therefore, when you come together in one place, it's not to eat of the Lord's Supper, but for in eating each one takes, and he's describing the manner of how they were taking the Lord's Supper. He is actually teaching them again about godliness. This thing is really simple. So again, this is verse 19 could be easily something I could teach on, because those who are approved, when Paul said you that those these problems arise, for there must also be factions among you, that those who are approved may be recognized among you. What Paul here is teaching again, just like Timothy, Paul himself, Jesus. When there comes a problem, the Spirit of the living God lifts up prophets to teach. And he lifts up prophets to teach, not that they are approved by men. That's not what Paul's saying. That they are approved by the Spirit of the living eternal God to teach, thus say the Lord. That's what he's saying. These people raise up to because they are approved. They were taught of the Spirit to teach. But sadly enough, just like Jesus, just like the prophets before him, just like Paul, just like Timothy, they're going to become pilgrim in the earth, because men love evil and not the light. And so this is the same thing that Paul is reiterating in First Timothy 3, where we talk about God walking in the flesh. For the demons that are out there, Jesus declare definitively, as I'm going to finish right now, because I'm talking about godliness and those who are righteous in this age and any age to come, because God is always going to lift up a prophet that's speaking the truth and is going to bring the words clearly. They're going to have a hard time living in this time. It's just, I don't know, that's just how it is. But it's also a testimony that God never, never, ever, ever will not leave a witness of himself and his word. God will always leave a witness. So, to conclude here, as we go back to 1 Timothy, and he talk about without controversy, which turned into a controversy. Here, it says, what Paul was doing there in Corinthian was the very same thing that he is speaking of here. He was saying, let God manifest in your flesh, in your mind, in your soul, in your body, in your thoughts, in your concept, in your doing, in your walking, in your sleeping, in your just doing. Let God allow the Spirit of God to manifest in your flesh. Let it be justified in spirit, which is God. Let it be seen of angel, which is God. Let it be preached among the Gentile, which is God. Let it be believed on in the world, which is God. Let it be received up into glory, which is God. God is our righteousness. Jesus Christ, the chief cornerstone. So when you look at verse 16 again, for those who are a little philosophers, don't take this out of context to make it a pretext. Let's go to chapter 3 and we'll see what godliness is. This is a faithful saying. I could even say this is a godliness saying. That's the same thing. This is a godliness saying. If a man desire the position of a bishop, he desire a good work. Then here is godliness. A bishop then must be blameless. This is the Spirit of the living God dwelling in the man to be blameless. The husband of one wife. This is the Spirit of the living God in this man, teaching him that he must have one wife. To be temperate. This is the Spirit of the living God living in a man's mind or a people that is temperate. This is the Spirit of the living God living amongst the people. Sober-minded. This is the Spirit of the living God living into a man's mind and conscious to be sober-minded. Of good behavior. This is the Spirit of the living God living in a man's spirit to have good behavior. This is what hospitable, as we say in our country. This is godliness. I desire all these things, but because we are pilgrim Rasta, the thing becomes so overwhelming. It seems like we have to go out into the wilderness to live, even if we are trying to live like this, because there is so much enmity in the world right now. Even in this big city where them call New York City, there is so much. I can't say many. So much. The volume is the volume is a flood. It's a deluge of lawlessness. It becomes extremely difficult unless we move out of the whole world. We just move out and just go live in a monastery and walk around and humming, because that's how much it is. So we have to allow. We have to. It's so difficult. Sometimes I don't know what to do. So I'm making this video for those people who intend on living righteous in this time. It's going to be difficult, and I see it first hand, second hand, third hand, and fourth hand. But hope in God. Every time you get knocked down, get up back. Every time you get knocked down, get up back and hope in God. So the truth of it is, I'm not gonna belabor this, but it's right there. What is godliness? If you talk about Jesus, you can also talk about the prophets before Jesus. Jesus is the culmination of those prophets up to his time. But truly, even after Jesus, he declared himself in the written text that we are reading in the New Testament, said the disciples, them are going to be greater than him. But that's how it's supposed to be. So if somebody said they're greater than Jesus, Jesus understand that if he's the chief cornerstone, him are the builders, him started, then those who build upon his message are going to be greater than him. When the Spirit of the Lord bring more information to those people, they're going to be, even Jesus recognized that through the Spirit of the eternal Father that dwelleth in him. So he listened and acquiesced to the Father, and he was able to say the disciples were going to be greater than him. And look at the Apostle Paul, look at Peter, and look at all of the apostles to this time. And look at many men now who follow in a Jesus footsteps, even so though some of them are wolves. They're great. But if they use Jesus as the chief cornerstone, indeed they're going to be great. But we just pray that their whole foundation that they build upon was solid and solid like a rock. So when the storm comes and hit the building, if some loss I saw, but it will stay, it will remain standing. And let me stop right here. As you go to the great apostasy, it's just a continuation of the mystery, which is no mystery, of godliness. The mystery is Mystery Babylon. Because you say simply, let me just put it this, it's more of a mystery, Mystery Babylon, because Mystery Babylon talk with two tongues like a snake. Them talk like them a lamb, like them Christ-like, but the next minute them talk like a giant, breathing out fire and a kill people and a burn up people. And so they have the mystery. Paul just used this that in the context that people didn't understand godliness, and this is how you become sons and daughters of the Most High God, because you profess godliness. You want to do right, even though you don't reach the mark. You desire the mark, you will the mark. But God knows, just like Isaiah the prophet, when you dwell among a people with, you're just gonna have a difficult time. That's it. So this again is just to clarify, without controversy, which turn in our controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. He was just saying, God, the Spirit, the eternal Father, the everlasting Father, manifests himself into a human walking being. And the devil, them know him too. They recognize the Spirit. They recognize the Spirit when it speaks. They know him. And I could get deeper into this, but I pray as the Spirit of truth comes, and you even listen to this, even halfway, that it will entice you to listen to it, because the truth is here. Be blessed.